Hey everybody, welcome to the ASEA 5. It's our show on Friday nights where we have people from all over the country, sometimes all over the world, sharing information. I'm Dr. Maureen Hayes from Galveston, Texas, right outside of Houston. We've got Jim Glenn and his beautiful wife Ann from Science
Hello there.
Jim is our financial person, Ann is our nutritional specialist. And we have the amazing Dr. Lee Osler from Washington State. He's a dentist, a superb dentist up there, and also one of the founders and first presidents of AOSH, which is the American Academy of Oral Systemic Health. Very, very brilliant person. And tonight we have an incredible guest joining us who's bringing something really important to the table, Russell Mariani, who is a digestive expert and has been treating people and consulting with people for 40 years now and has a really interesting backstory. Ann, do you want to kind of clue us in or tell us a little bit about it? And then Russell, you can fill in the gaps.
Well, from what I read on Russell's story on his website, there's all sorts of neat stuff on there, but I know the background. You had your own health journey in your late teens, 18 to 20 something. You were struggling with a health challenge, and that got you to think about helping people with their gut. And I was amazed on the site about your emphasis is on root causes. So maybe you can share a little bit more about that. I like that you had also another post relating the brain and the gut connection, and there's just some great stuff. So I think everyone will really benefit from tonight because 57% of the population has digestive issues. So that's a lot of people. And so I know, Russell, I don't know the exact year that you started with the ASEA, but I believe it was before Jim and I came 5 years ago, but you were longer than that, right? With the ASEA?
Megan and I were introduced to ASEA in June of 2011. So we just celebrated our 9th year with ASEA. Very happy about that.
That's awesome.
Now, I want to put that 53% into perspective. That's 188 million people in this country suffer. And like when we were talking a little while ago, Russell, I too had severe digestive issues at the age of 18 that put me in the hospital for a little bit. And I think it is one of the most misunderstood areas of health is our diet and how that affects our body, our immune system, and everything that we do. So we've had you on a couple of times, but like we like to say, there's a lot of new people here, and there's going to be a lot of new people that will be watching this for the first time. In your own words, Russell, could you please share first what redox biochemistry, redox biology, the ASEA redox, what is redox to the average person, not like you and the other docs, not medical, but what is this technology and why is it such a big deal?
Yeah, great question. First, I would like to say hi to everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me for this live on Friday night. Really appreciate it. And I would say that the number that you mentioned, 57%, is a low number, is a very conservative number. I've read in various books and studies and reports that it's probably closer to 70%. At any moment, 70% of the population of the United States, anyway, is suffering from some type of digestive system disorder. And part of the reason that's happening for so many people is an imbalance in the deficiency of redox signaling molecules. So redox signaling molecules were first discovered in 1997. And in 1998, the scientists who made that discovery won the Nobel Prize for Medicine and Physiology. Since 1998, laboratories around the world have been trying to biosynthesize these molecules and put them into supplement form, knowing how essential they are to every physiological process. Everything that happens inside a cell and between cells is happening through the vehicle of redox signaling molecules. So in Gary Samuelson's latest book, Chapter 5, the title of Chapter 5 is redox signaling molecules mediate everything. So literally nothing happens inside our body. Nothing happens inside the cells of our body without the assistance of redox signaling molecules. So they're critically important. And in 2008, a team of scientists led by Dr. Gary Samuelson figured out for the first time in history how to manufacture these molecules outside the human body in such a way that when you put them into the human body, the body recognized them as if the body had made them, because our body is constantly producing redox signaling molecules. Every cell of our body has these little energy factories called mitochondria, and the mitochondria are constantly producing redox signaling molecules for many reasons, as we just said a few minutes ago. But as we age, and due to all the other factors that cause chronic degenerative conditions, environmental stress, financial stress, poor diet, improper hydration, toxins in the environment, all these normal causes contribute to the body's inability to produce sufficient quantity and sufficient quality of these redox signaling molecules. So not only is it a breakthrough that our wonderful company, ASEA, has produced a redox signaling supplement for the first time in history, and we've had the benefit of that for now 10 years, it's a complete game changer.
Wow. How impossible is it that we have this? I mean, with your background, and same thing with Maureen and Lee, look, I'm not medical by far, but this was a gift, I believe, from above. And when I like to ask doctors and medical people, because when we talk to people, I met with a lot of people today up in a little town called Kerrville. And it just really, it sounds so impossible. It sounds like you've got the fountain of youth in a blue bottle. And it just, to you being medical, Russell, well, how were you introduced to this? And how difficult was it with your background to believe this, that these were stabilized and it's the exact replica of what's in us, everything alive, quite frankly, plants and animals as well?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I might reveal some lack of my own education here, but basically, I was introduced to ASEA, Redox, by a dear friend of mine who had been suffering for 10 years, a fellow practitioner who had been suffering for over 10 years from a condition that's caused by a tick bite. Everyone knows what that condition is called. And he had literally invested a small personal fortune, I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, way over $100,000 in that 10-year period, traveling around the world looking for solutions to this tick-borne illness. And absolutely nothing had worked. And I had been checking in on him every month, every other month for several years. And I had seen him personally in January of 2011, and he was not doing well at all. In fact, he looked the worst that I had seen him in many, many years. But in June of 2011, I got a phone call, and it was my friend, Art. And he sounded normal. And I remember he started talking to me, and I said, whoa, wait a minute, Art, you sound fantastic. You sound normal. You sound healthy. And he said, yes, finally, I found something that worked. And I said, what is it? And he said, ASEA. We just called it ASEA back in those days, but obviously it was ASEA Redox. And I said, what the heck are redox signaling molecules? So I personally had never heard of them before, and I was a little embarrassed about that. So, but Art was a smart person, and he put me on a phone call with Dr. Gary Samuelson and Dr. Rob Ward within a couple of days. And so I had a lot of questions, and but basically, I also read Gary Samuelson's first book, Secret of Healing Revealed, a journey into redox signaling. And I recognized that even though I had never heard of these things before, they played an absolutely essential role in every cellular process. Not just signaling, not just communication, but activation of enzymes and hormones, activation of nutrients. Redox signaling molecules are on the cell membrane. They literally are the gatekeepers at the portals that allow oxygen into the cell, that allow water into the cell, that allow nutrients into the cell, and then help to metabolize those raw materials once inside the cell. So again, I didn't know much at all about redox signaling molecules, but once I read Gary's book, I immediately turned back to page 1 and read it again. And I just couldn't believe that something this important and something this seemingly impossible had been achieved. And I couldn't wait to put those little molecules into my own body. But it was mostly my concern for my clients. I work with a lot of people with very seriously challenged digestive systems. And typically when people have suffered from a digestive illness for a long time, their immune system is compromised. They typically have many other symptoms: chronic fatigue, headaches, joint pain, skin problems, sleep problems. So I was very interested in seeing how these redox signaling molecules could help the people that I was working with. And of course, I was very pleasantly surprised, as all of the other practitioners in our ASEA family have discovered, that it works 100% of the time. It's just a matter of how much and enough time with that person before really significant changes and improvements begin to happen.
Now, I want to make sure you understand you're not alone. Maureen and Lee, can you talk to the fact that you also had no idea? If I'm not mistaken, Maureen, your sister knew more about redox than you did, if I'm not mistaken. Got to put a plug in for your sister.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm an anesthesiologist and a pain specialist. So,
That's your excuse, huh?
yeah, that's my excuse. I mean, it's something that would have come across my desk. Although nitric oxide is the molecule that Russell was talking about that had been not only discovered, but there was a Nobel Prize given for it. And most people have heard of it because it just has such amazing properties. Now, that was the first redox molecule that was actually identified, although I never heard anybody call it redox signaling molecules, and it's not one of the molecules in our product. But when a friend of mine, it wasn't even a medical person or a scientist or anything, it was someone with a business background, and you guys have heard me tell this story, Terry Latham, who I knew from a different endeavor. I heard he had left this company that he had been with, and I said, why would you do that? He was highly successful with that company. And he said, I left it for a breakthrough. And I said, okay, I'd bite. And he said, it's called redox signaling molecules. And I was like, I've never heard of that. And so when I found out it was made from salt water, I was not very impressed. But I was talking to my sister, who is not a scientist, not a doctor, not a nurse, not a healthcare professional, but she is a medical writer at my medical school, the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. And I just happened to be having a conversation with her, and I said, hey, Terry Latham told me about this breakthrough. I've never heard of it, arrogant. And she said, what is it? I said, it's called redox signaling molecules. And she said, well, I've heard of it. And I said, you have not. And she said, no, I have. I said, how could you have heard of it if I haven't heard of it? She said, we just got a $10.5 million NIH COBRA grant to study it in all sorts of disciplines, cardiovascular, orthopedic, aging, diabetes, a whole slew of stuff. And she sent me the press release. And so as you can imagine, here I was kind of poo-pooing the whole thing, but Terry Latham, the computer guy, knew about it, and my sister, the medical writer, knew about it, and I had no clue. And so I had to do a deep dive because, I was like, this is crazy. These people all know about it. I've never even heard of it. And honestly, the more I looked at it, the more compelling I found the science. And, you can go back into this because, you know, I was an anesthesiologist, of course, but I had gone back into training for something called age management medicine, which is where I really learned more about nutrition and about the microbiome and about what those bacteria are doing in our gut and why they're so important and why the actual mix of who's in there is so important. And so, Russell, I hope that you can educate us a little bit on that and explain to people what the microbiome is. And we talked about our immune status, you talked about sleep, and I think, Jim, you mentioned the second brain, but if you could speak a little bit to that so that people understand how incredibly important this is, I think that would be fabulous. So, thanks.
Sure. So the way I like to think about the microbiome is as a ecosystem of organisms. And the way that I try to explain to people is, most people know that when you think of the body, the human body, it's composed of cells: bone cells, liver cells, kidney cells, lung cells, brain cells, nerve cells. And, you know, there's some discussion, but that the human body is composed of 100 trillion cells. And that's a pretty big number, 100 trillion. But living in the intestinal microbiome, which really includes your mouth, your throat, your stomach, 24 feet of small intestine, 5 to 6 feet of large intestine. If you take that 30-foot long tube and spread it out, it would cover an entire tennis court. So it's a tremendous amount of surface area. Living in that ecosystem is a number that's quite unfathomable. It's 1,000 times 100 trillion organisms living in the intestinal microbiome. And what we're learning over the last few years is that we also have a microbiome in our lungs, which is why COVID has adversely affected so many people with pre-existing conditions. If the microbiome of the lung is not really healthy and functioning normally, you're going to be more susceptible to all kinds of viruses. So we have a microbiome on our skin, we have a microbiome in our lungs, we have a microbiome in the intestines. So so out of those 1,000 times 100 trillion organisms, 80% or more are supposed to be probiotics, beneficial bacteria. And they've discovered at least 500 different types of probiotic organisms. Now, if you had 80% or more of the probiotic bacteria dominating your system, then you would have really healthy digestion and elimination. You wouldn't have any complaints, no gas, no bloating, no cramping, no sluggish movements, no loose movements. Your immune system would be great. It would be perfectly normal. You would sleep like a baby. Your skin would be clear. All kinds of health benefits. We like to say everything is downstream of the microbiome. But these bacteria are not just hanging out. They're not just hanging out in your small and large intestine. They're very active. They eat our food. Whatever you eat, you're feeding the bacteria in your system. And healthy bacteria prefer really healthy food. Unhealthy bacteria prefer sugar, prefer processed food, prefer junk food. So, but if you have the right balance of probiotics, the probiotic organisms, the healthy bacteria, produce natural antibiotics. The most powerful antibiotics ever discovered are manufactured from our healthy bacteria. The healthy bacteria produce waste products that regulate the pH throughout your whole system. So again, no gas, no bloating, no cramping. The waste products of the healthy bacteria produce enzymes to help digest your food, help break down your food. The waste products of the healthy bacteria produce hormones, include certain type of hormones, and on and on and on. So the idea, though, is that the bacteria eat your food, digest food, and produce products, waste products, that are beneficial not only to your GI system, but to all the systems of your body. So what happens to most people, like we were saying in the beginning of the conversation, 57%, some statistics say 70% at any given moment of time, people are suffering from irritable bowel, uncomfortable symptoms because they don't have symbiosis. They don't have 80% or more of the bacteria living in their system being probiotics. They have a condition called intestinal dysbiosis. They have a system that is 50%, 60%, 70% or more of bad bacteria, viruses, germs, candida, yeast, mold, fungus, parasites, worms. It's a terrible mixture of things that can take over the intestines. And of course, these organisms are eating your food, digesting your food, and eliminating waste. So what a lot of people don't know is that it is the waste products of the bad organisms that cause all the negative symptoms. All of them, the full gamut, gas, bloating, cramping, etc. So the reason to eat any food is to feed these bacteria. And the reason to take probiotics, and in ASEA we have, in my opinion, the best probiotic out there, and I've tried them all over the last 40 years. I've taken probiotics supplementally since 1990. So I was an early adopter of supplemental probiotics. But I've literally not seen a better probiotic than our wonderful biome. So by putting into your system a healthy full spectrum probiotic over time, and then you combine that with ASEA and better hydration, a little better food choices, and over time you can change an unhealthy microbiome to a healthy one. I know that was a lot to say.
No, that was amazing, and it's it's really interesting because my husband and I just went through the plague. We're over it, and we had very different symptoms. He has underlying lung condition, and that's where he got hit. Whereas mine was mostly GI, unfortunately. But it's interesting because during that time I had been on a keto diet, and I had been eating a ton, actually even craving fermented foods. So I had a very healthy diet, was taking all the different supplements that, you're supposed to take, the zinc, vitamin D, C, all of that jazz. But it's funny, when I couldn't eat for a while. And then when I could eat, all I wanted to eat was like pasta and rice just total carbs, total junk. And I thought, so, so I luckily, I had biome on hand and just really started pounding it. But if you can, and I do want Dr. Lee to get in here and give his background, and because he does so much with bacteria from the gums and all, and is so educated on that. And he talks about, the different variations of bacteria, especially in your mouth, and how it's related to systemic disease. So I want to hear from him. But I do, if you would, when you come back on, talk about biome, and maybe also talk about the kind of things that we need to feed those good bacteria, like fermented foods and all. So, Dr. Lee, do you mind jumping in here and kind of giving your background for us all?
I'd be happy to. Like Russell and probably the rest of us, when I first learned about this, I had no clue what redox signaling was. I remember the term from chemistry classes. At least I thought I did. And we were sitting in a doctor's appointment with my wife, with her physician, a very highly trained physician. And we said, she's plateauing, she's really not making progress, what do we do? And he just kind of off the cuff said, well, you should get her on some redox molecules. And I remember looking at him and saying, well, what is that? And he said, just go Google it, get some. And that was all he said. And I really don't think at the time he was even understanding a lot of it. I think he was grasping at some straws because this was a tough health case for him. So we did, and long story short, it was like, for her, it was like flipping a switch. Probably within 48 hours, and one of the principles I've come to realize is that when the bigger your deficit, the bigger the difference between health and disease. You know, if you're sitting more on the disease and sick side, you're probably going to feel something really quick because it's making such an obvious difference in your cellular health status. And so shortly after that, I'm a past president of the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health, and we were about 2 weeks away from our annual scientific session. It was going to be held in Vegas. And I wasn't in charge of the program anymore, or the speakers, or anything. So, but I thought before I went, I should probably find out who's speaking and who the exhibitors are, so I could not embarrass myself when I showed up. And so I was reviewing the website of the program, and there was Astia as a sponsor, and Dr. Hayes was the person of contact for this exhibit booth that was going to be at this medical dental conference. We had a joint meeting with the American College for the Advancement of Medicine, which is a functional integrative medicine academy. And so I remember calling her, and I just I can't wait till this weekend to learn what this is, because I just had this experience with my wife. It's astounding, and many months later, it's like she's off her pain meds and antidepressants and other things for her. That was her experience. And so I remember calling, I sent an email to Dr. Hayes, and we got on the phone and spoke, and she copped out and said she wasn't going to come to the meeting because she was going to be in London with her husband doing some fancy award that he was getting. But anyway, I met some other people there that she told me to talk to. And what I heard the functional medicine physicians talking about was this gut health thing, the gut dysbiosis, the cell detoxification, the redox signaling in the intestine, and the way the endotoxins from SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and so forth. And I remember thinking, we're at this combined dental medical meeting, and I'm hearing these physicians talk about endotoxins, and a little light went on in my head, and it's like, we've got 700 species of bacteria in the upper end of the GI tube called the mouth, and the bad ones, the pathogens there, make endotoxins, and that's one of the targets that we work at clinically and with home care, is to deal with the pathogens that create these endotoxins that cause all the disease in the mouth that we're worried so much about. And all of a sudden the lights just started going off, and I'm OCD enough about how electrons move around from molecule to molecule that I had to do the deep dive and kind of figure it out. So I did what Russell did. I got the books. I read them all once. I read them twice. I got the Redox Life book. I read every page of it. I mean, I just did a deep dive and came away understanding much better what it was I was observing in my own self. I had some really great advancements, and we can maybe talk about that some other time. But that's kind of where I was. And as I learned the science, or learn more about the science, it was more the basic science. People say, well, show me the studies, where's the random controlled studies of this thing? And there are none, and it's purposeful that there are none, at least at this point. But the basic science, there's tens and tens of thousands of basic literature reviews in PubMed and in databases all over that talk about the whole concept of what redox signaling is. And it is ubiquitous. It's like every cell in every body, whether you're, a mammal or a reptile or a plant, it runs on these principles of how electrons move from molecule to molecule in rapid succession and set the stage for how genes express. And that's one of the things that really ties into what Russell's focused on with, things that go on in the gut, is that there really is no disease in the body. Well, I'm not going to say that conclusively, but, we talk about DNA. We talk about, well, I have a gene for this and a gene for that, and therefore this and therefore that. It's not the DNA really that we need to worry about. It's the RNA, it's the expression, it's what gets transcribed and translated, and the downstream effects from that. And so that's where redox signaling comes in, is because that's what's running the switches. that's what's activating. You use the word activating. That's activating gene expression. And if I have lethargic or unsuccessful gene expression in the antioxidant cellular response to oxidation, I'm going to get some form of disease in one way or another. And I'll throw it back to Russell now, but one of the things I've been very impressed with as I'm studying gut health is that it's almost all, I mean, every gut disorder you can think of has its basis, not so much in dysbiosis, but if we go even one step below that, it's about oxidation. It's inflammation in the cell. That's what the dysbiosis causes, is an imbalance inside the cell of it becomes oxidatively stressed and things go downhill from there because we can't protect our own cells. So Russell, I'm going to throw it back to you. Maybe you can fill in some of the blanks there without, but staying compliant and everything. But that was my story.
But I want to make sure we keep it to where us ordinary folk can understand what the heck you're talking about. Okay? Now, I want to let people know that what's behind Russell's left shoulder, that is a real fire, correct, Russell? That is not a TV back there showing a fake flame.
That's right. That is a real fire. And I'm sitting in a beautiful old cottage built in 1887 in Meaford, Ontario, Canada, where we have our summer cottage. And actually, you mentioned earlier Dr. Marty Morin is going to be on an upcoming Friday night. And Dr. Marty and his wife, Kathy, have a cottage about 20 miles from this very spot. So we're planning to.
That's awesome.
I will just say about that fire that's like your gut on sugar.
Yeah, so actually that's very good, Dr. Lee. That's for a good layperson explanation of oxidative stress, that's it. Okay, oxidation, so inflammation, I mean, the middle of that word comes from flame or flammable. And again, what Dr. Lee was saying was really important. It's not the dysbiosis that causes all the problems. It is the inflammation. It's the waste products of those bad organisms are toxic to the cells in the lining of the intestine. And those cells become oxidatively stressed. Those cells become inflamed and they stop working properly. In the case of when that inflammation occurs in the small intestine, there's a name for that condition. It's very common. Jim mentioned it earlier in the conversation, maybe before we went live, because he had this condition. But when you have inflammation in the small intestine, the cells that are responsible for the absorption and assimilation of the nutrients from the food that you're eating don't work. And so you end up losing weight. You end up becoming malnourished, even if you're eating a perfectly 100% organic whole food diet. If you have inflammation at that level because of the dysbiosis, because of all kinds of other factors, but if you have a system that's dominated by the bad organisms, you're going to have that level of inflammation. So again, changing your diet is a crucial factor. So I didn't mean to imply that, but you have to, there's several things that you have to do. Ann mentioned earlier, going to my website, there are 7 root cause areas that need to be addressed for all chronic conditions, but definitely for all digestive system disorders. And in my opinion, the 7th root cause area is redox signaling. So you could be doing everything else correctly, proper hydration, mindful habits, addressing your micronutrients. Sorry, I just got a weird message on my machine that my laptop battery is low, but I'm not on a battery. I'm plugged in here. Anyway, sorry about that. So ask another question. I just got distracted there.
Hey, Russell, do you mind sharing your website with everybody so they can look up all those 7?
And make sure your computer is plugged in so we don't lose you.
Yeah, it's plugged in, so that was really strange. That's why it was so distracting.
Move for a
I
second.
set everything up earlier, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, that's
And thank you, Maureen. So the website is the Center for Functional Nutrition.net. So
Putting that in the
we've
chat
also,
section, Maureen?
I'm typing it.
Okay.
The Center for Functional
the Center for Functional Nutrition.net. And while we're mentioning that, I would like to make a quick plug for my book.
all right.
Very interesting. Before the whole pandemic thing happened, early January, the first week of January, I woke up and I had written, another book that was published on this same topic of digestive disorders. And I had no plans.
Doing it again.
Oh.
Oh, it must have been.
Oh,
It may have had to do with, he is in in Canada, 30-degree weather. Who knows? Maybe he'll come back after he plays with his equipment.
I hope.
Yeah, well, we're waiting. I was going to ask him, and we can just chat about it. I think what makes our biome so good is the slippery elm. That's that property that makes ours different. I mean, there's literally probably thousands by now of probiotics out there, but we've got the prebiotic and the probiotic. So,
Right, and this
one
looks
is feeding the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so amazing. And when you combine that in the puzzle with redox, then you can see gut health improve. Yeah.
Maureen, can you maybe touch on that? Because we currently are out of the biome product. And guys, I just want to let everybody know that please do not stop placing your order for the biome, because you want to place your order for the biome, because as soon as it's available, and we're all praying it comes in sooner, it is due to be in towards the end of October.
Yep.
But if you hold off on ordering it, you'll be at the back of the line. If you get your order in now, then as soon as it comes in, the orders that come in first are going to get filled first. So having said that, Maureen and Lee and Ann, what are some things that people can do? Can we stretch out what we have, or what are some other good foods that we can eat to help our gut until we get the biome back?
Well, I mean, you're supposed to take 3 a night, and if you really needed to stretch that bottle or 2, we got extra before they ran out, but you could do 2 that night. I've recommended for people bone broth. It's good for your digestion. Now I do a plant-based whole food diet, so a lot of that I'm already doing, but I saw the digestion healing with just redox before we had our biome come out. So it's amazing when you add, because I was doing everything else in the puzzle right, but then when I added the signaling, then it addressed what I was missing, and then my digestion improved on its own. So bone broth, there he is.
What are we gonna do with you, Russell?
Got you back.
Get back to the States.
my dog ate my homework and I was abducted by aliens.
Oh man, are you all right?
Love it.
I'm okay.
Hey, we were just talking about substitutes. Why, when you vanished, we were talking briefly about what can we do in the absence of the biome until we get it towards the end of October. And I touched on, don't withdraw your order, keep your orders in place so that you can be the first in line when it comes. But what are some logical things that people can do in the meantime?
So a couple of things, probiotics have been around for a while, at least 30, 35 years. And ASEA's biome has only been available for the last 2 years, I think. So many people who have switched to, so people are in two categories. People who never took a probiotic before biome. And so, but people who use different probiotics prior to biome. So for people who are familiar with other probiotics, I would just say temporarily, go back to the one that you used before. I'm lucky we have lots of biome on hand, so I don't think we'll ever run out. For people who have never had a probiotic before, and Biome was their very first probiotic, and I know there are many people like that. I guess the first thing I would say is talk to your upline. There may be a recommendation there from your sponsor, from your upline, and if not, just go to Whole Foods, go to your local supplement supplier and ask them what they consider a very good probiotic. So that's in the short term in terms of supplements, but for sure, if you've been using Biome and you've experienced an improvement in your GI system, you want to be careful and not feed the bad bacteria. So avoid processed food, avoid junk food, be careful with alcohol consumption. But it's really, if I had to say the favorite food of the bad organisms, it's definitely sugar, refined carbohydrates, but mostly junk food. I mean, pasta, if you're eating it in excess, yes, that'll become problematic, but a little pasta here and there is not going to be a big problem. And of course, there are naturally fermented foods like sauerkraut. And more people are familiar with kimchi, which, if you go into an Oriental store, they pickle everything. All vegetables can be pickled and have been pickled, historically through the years. So those are very good prebiotic food. They literally provide the food for the healthy bacteria. So being hydrated, drinking ASEA. Now, something that a lot of people may not know, and especially if you're new to ASEA redox, the redox signaling molecules know the difference between the healthy bacteria and the unhealthy bacteria, and they feed and strengthen the healthy gut bacteria, and they do not feed the bad bacteria. So that's another one of these little miracles, I think, that is just the incredible intelligence of nature, knowing the difference between the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. So those are a few things that we can do in the absence of Biome.
Let me make a quick comment there, Russell, and just tag on to that. And that is, when you think about that everything under the sun is controlled by redox signaling, well, that includes bacteria. And the bacteria in your gut are using redox signaling so they can stay and be healthy. And the point that you just made is really important, because redox signaling molecules are part of our immune system. They're part of the oxidative burst inside white blood cells that kill bacteria. That's native. That's how we were designed. That is our immune system. And so when you think about the beauty of this, if we're consuming bioidentical redox signaling molecules, there's really a wide latitude of functional use there, and the bacteria get in on the game as well.
Exactly.
Amen. Exactly.
And I was just sharing before you came back, we were just talking about, bone broth is good for the system.
Yes, very good. Bone broth,
Yeah.
miso, hamari.
Yep, miso, yep. And
Miso,
yeah, and people don't realize the importance of fiber in their diet. I mean, the nice thing
That's
about
right.
our vitamins is they synergetically work with redox. So maybe somebody needs more source, maybe they need more Life Max. I mean, if they got a yucky diet, and I don't even want to know some of those that are out there, then they need to maybe supplement with more source, more Life Max for longevity, for inflammation, and just simple stuff like having pears on hand, having more fiber in your diet, prunes, and things that are good for the gut. And so for me, I saw improvement in digestion just with getting on redox. That was before the biome even existed. It was that missing puzzle in my, had everything else right, but I was missing the signaling. And I was amazed at the healing myself. So pretty neat.
Russell, are you seeing a lot of children dealing with gut issues? Younger people?
Yes, it's really terrible. When I, my own story, when I was 18, I was misdiagnosed with colon cancer, and then they decided on ulcerative colitis. But the day that I went to the gastroenterologist, I had a 9 o'clock appointment, 9 o'clock in the morning. At noon, the nurse came into the waiting room and came over to me and said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "I had a 9 o'clock appointment." And she said, "That you're only 18 years old. You know, 99% of our practice is people 50 years and older." Okay, so that was 1973. It was almost unheard of that a young person developed these type of problems. Today, unfortunately, half of my practice is people under the age of 20. It's really terrible. But just a quick plug. Thank you, Anne, for bringing up the other very important option for strengthening your microbiome. Definitely consume more Source. Definitely consume more Life Max. Definitely consume more Omega. So these things work synergistically with the molecules, and all those products that via nutritionals all contain ingredients that will support the microbiome. Absolutely.
How much can you, were you going to ask that, Maureen?
Yeah, how much is, can you take too much of these things?
Well, yes, I think typically with any supplement, other than redox, we know you cannot OD on redox. You can drink a whole bottle a day or more. But typically with nutritional supplements, if you take too much, you're going to have gas and you might have a loose bowel movement. So be careful about that.
Well, and it's real food. So if you're getting all your micronutrients, macros, your enzymes, your superfoods, and, obviously if you're taking extra Source, you're supposed to have 4 a day. I mean, you're going to get more fruit and vegetables in there. So yeah, you may have some extra changes, but the beauty of it is they're 10 calories per every capsule, and you can throw them in your smoothie, preferably a vegetable smoothie, not fruit, and get your roughage. And so I'm all about keeping the most cleanest diet you can get, because you're not going to have near as many troubles.
I remember Sean Burke saying that with extreme athletes that he takes half of his supplements in the morning, then the other half right before he goes to bed, because that's when he says that when the body needs to do a lot of the repair work. Can you talk real quick, Russell? And I met with a veterinarian today, a retired military lieutenant colonel, and she's talking about water. How critical is water, and then also clean water?
Yeah, so literally next to redox signaling, or let me put it this way. I think many of us have discovered over the years that the single most important thing that a new person can do once they've been introduced to redox signaling molecule supplements, ASEA and Renew 28, the easiest way to optimize the benefits that are possible once you start replenishing redox signaling molecules is to make sure you're properly hydrated. So everything is happening at the cellular level, and literally every cell of our body, 55 to 75% of the physical structure of every cell is water. So if your cells, if the body is dehydrated at any level, 10%, 15%, 20%, you're going to start having symptoms. A headache. Typically a headache, the major cause of a headache is dehydration, underhydration. Fatigue, underhydration. Digestive problems, underhydration. So absolutely. And so you don't want to drink tap water though. Even though the EPA is supposed to regulate city water around the country, those standards are really not what you would get from purified water or using a really good water filter. So spring water, really high quality filtered water, but not tap water. So the water needs to be of a certain quality. And then the basic formula for hydration that more and more scientists are agreeing with, And of course, elite athletes knew this years ago. The formula is half our body weight in ounces of water per day. So I weigh 200 pounds. I drink 100 ounces of water a day, not all at once. Literally, I drink a certain amount before breakfast, and then another amount in the time between breakfast and lunch, and then more water in the afternoon. So I'm usually about 90% of the way there by dinner time. So in the evening, I'm only drinking a very small amount of water. So, but to answer that question, in my opinion, I've had two major transformational things happen in my health over the years, over the last 45 years. One of them was learning about proper daily hydration, and the other one was redox signaling molecules. They are transformational.
Russell, how about sparkling water?
Where's your champagne water, Maureen?
I don't know. I didn't grab one before today.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. Our body works really hard, 24 hours a day, to remove carbon dioxide from the body. Every time we exhale, that's carbon dioxide going out. Carbon dioxide is a toxin in the human body. And all those little bubbles and all those sparkly waters and carbonated beverages, that's carbon. That's carbon dioxide pumped into the water, pumped into, so, you know, occasionally a little bit of bubble water, fine. But a lot of people that I end up working with are drinking that kind of water on a continual basis. As soon as they stop doing that, a lot of their symptoms start to go down right away.
Yeah.
Sorry, Maureen.
Maybe that's why I got the plague.
Maybe it's good you didn't have the jug.
I get some better water. Well, that's fantastic. Go ahead, Ann.
No, just Renew 28. You know, there's remedies to that in the gut health too, because of course, you know, it's going through the skin an inch and a half deep. It's twice as much redox. But I know Jerry White was assisting on someone and generously applying it. It's going to give more mobility, which will then make that intestine and that colon not be so sluggish. So you can generously apply this to those organs that may not be moving so good. Yeah, to that whole lower intestinal area. And of course, we know you can put it in the belly button, and we know you can apply it. I had a guy, he's almost 80, and I had him apply this to his, you could tell he had heartburn. And within a matter of, you know, we don't treat, diagnose, or cure. We're not claiming that. We're just saying, let your body heal itself. And in those few minutes I was with him, he said all the heartburn left. So it's pretty neat how this can work so quickly on digestion, on gut. Just use it. So this is great. Appreciate your time. You want to
Maureen,
add
Lee?
those last minutes?
Russell, people are asking for the name of your book. You held it up and then you disappeared. So can you put it up and I'll write it in the chat?
The gremlins got me. Thank you, Maureen. So yeah, I started to tell that story. We don't have time to tell the story. So the book is called Principle Eating.
Well, hold it up again. You keep putting it down too quick.
Principle Eating.
Principle Eating, the no diet way to complete health.
Love it.
Oh,
The digestive wellness edition. So the 7 root cause areas are all described in here, including redox signaling. So there's a chapter in here about redox signaling.
Awesome.
Not mentioned, but definitely talking about redox signaling.
Is it available on your website?
On our website.
Okay.
Awesome. That'd be
because
great.
you know, it's interesting. We've had a number of questions over in the chat. You know, it's interesting. I do keto. That works for me. I'm fluffy, little insulin resistant, so getting rid of all that sugar and fructose and everything, that works for me. You heard Ann talk about being plant-based. I've done that, and you know, and there's all sorts of theories about blood types and different things, and maybe another time, Russell, you can go into it if you have any information on that. I've been vegetarian and vegan many times in my life, and I don't lose any weight, you know. Well, of course, cookies have no meat in them, but that's another story. Really, if I'm being good and eating healthy, I still don't lose weight. Keto, at least this time, it's worked for me. So I think it's a personal thing. But as you heard me say, I eat a lot of fermented foods. And I actually have even made my own sauerkraut and kimchi. So you could do that. But I recommend getting it at Costco. It's a lot easier. So anyway, it's been great. Russell, thank you so much.
Yes.
This is such an important subject, and so very important right now when we don't have biome. Hopefully we'll have it back soon. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah.
We'd like to have you back on again, probably like on a quarterly basis, if you could do that, because really people need to understand more and more of this area, Russell.
Yeah.
Happy. Thanks so much for having me tonight, and really appreciate that you guys do this every Friday night. It's a tremendous service to the community, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, guys, we will not be on next Friday because we have our webvention. Please get back with your upline. Please check in your back office if you're familiar with that. Get your webvention ticket. Maureen Hayes will be one of the. Are you recorded or live, girl?
A little of both.
Oh, hot diggity dog. So we're going to have a medical panel?
We have a panel with a couple of medical people on it. So.
Okay.
Awesome.
So a lot of new things. Our founder will be obviously doing multiple talks. I will tell you, if you're brand new to this company, that is, I think everybody on here I know would readily agree that you do not want to miss Tyler Norton and his talks. They're absolutely phenomenal. So again, we will not be here next Friday. Then on October the 2nd, we've got the amazing Dr. Carmen Keith to share more. And then after that, Dr. David Silverman. And then after that, Dr. Aaron Kaufman. So we've got some great lineups, and we're just really honored that you're here. Hey, Russell, real quick, we can go a couple minutes over. You're making a transition into sharing more of the business. Why would you do that? Just real quick.
Yeah, I think the short answer is to reach more people.
Explain that. What do you mean?
Plain and simple. Well, so in my private practice over the last 40 years, I'm very proud that I've been able to impact the lives of several hundred people. It could be as close, could be 1,000 people that I've worked with directly. But when I look at the impact that someone like Trish and Bob have had, the size of their network, you're talking about a couple 100,000 people that have learned about this redox signaling supplement through people that they introduced and people who they introduced and people who they introduced. So I really believe that network marketing as a business model is here, not just for economic reasons, but for reasons of helping humanity through this very amazing and difficult transition, these very challenging times. This is a way for millions and millions of people to learn about the kind of technology that we've been talking about tonight. Redox signaling changes lives. So I think that's the primary reason. I want to leave a legacy. I want to be able to impact a lot more people in the last 25 years of my life.
That's awesome.
Well, and that's what's exciting as an ex-stockbroker. That to me, there's two sides to every coin, and we've been discussing the one side, and now briefly the other side, because there's a lot of people out there that might say we can't afford it, but yet when you can show them the way of sharing it with a handful of people, that you can actually get your product paid for, and in turn not only help your life, but like you said, and that's really important what you said, Russell, that you want more people to hear about it. And if you just keep it, sharing it one at a time, but if we go find other people that can share it a lot more at a time, but having that financial, a lot of people are hurting now financially. I know we were. I won't go into that right now, but we did not have the financial resources set aside. We did not have the cash flow set aside, and now we do. And so it allows a whole different lifestyle. I like to say we want to create time freedom, health freedom, and financial freedom. And thank God our founders said no to a lot of money and said yes to us.